Okay, thank you very much. These are the skills employers want. Thank you for that introduction. This is the skills that employers want, and for the next hour, we're going to discuss ways to assist students with identifying skills that employers want. As it's already been said, I guess we're going to have to flip. Do we have control over that? Okay. Okay, like we said earlier, my name is David Spears, and I'm part of the Gulf Coast Workforce Region College Navigators. Myself and Velta Worley, Felisa Laverne, and Diego Trevino, we collectively help to build bridges of communication and information between Workforce Solutions and the colleges in the Houston-Galveston area. Now, each of us will be covering different parts of the webinar as we go along. All, we just want to restate the same thing that we stated earlier, that since not all of us have camera or audio functions, we're going to utilize some of the tools by WebEx in order so we can have a little bit of participation. So as we go along through the webinar, we have the area that you can send a chat or question, and make sure it's, again, assigned to everyone, not just to certain people or participants of the group. So we're going to have time for a question and answer session toward the end of the webinar, but if you do have questions along the way, go ahead and enter those in the chat tool, and we're going to have somebody that's going to be keeping track of that so we can make sure that all of your questions get answered after the webinar. Okay, so Workforce Solutions, as you may know, in Texas is made up of 28 separate workforce boards. This map is from the Texas Workforce Commission website, and you can see the URL just below the picture of the state of Texas. And you can see that each area, in those 28 areas, each area is designated by a number. For instance, number 1, way up there in the Panhandle section of Texas, and the board that we work for, the College Navigators, board number 28, or the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, way down there in the southeast part of Texas. So in fact, right now, use the comment section and comment what area that you're from. Take a look at the state of Texas and see what, I see one is from the Alamo section. I guess that's near San Antonio, I would presume. I know that we're from the Gulf Coast Workforce Board. Oftentimes I've met people, okay, yes, thank you very much, from the South San Antonio area. So that's cool. Okay, Alamo, there's another Alamo. Anybody else? 13. Okay. Maybe 13. Okay, West Central Texas. So we're dispersed pretty wide for the participants that are on, dispersed pretty wide in the state of Texas. Anybody else? Okay, like I said before, the College Navigators, we're from the Gulf Coast section. And this next slide, this is kind of a focus on the Gulf Coast section, or the Gulf Coast Workforce Board. This is a close-up of the 13 counties that make up the Gulf Coast Workforce Board. And the Gulf Coast Workforce Board is the largest in the state of Texas. Of course, the city of Houston is in Harris County. And I have to say, go Astros at this point, if nobody minds. So. Okay. All right, our objectives today. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to assist students with identifying the skills that employers want, be able to highlight those skills in order to meet job needs, and also be able to find occupations that are in demand in a particular area. You know, oftentimes we forget about the importance of finding or preparing for jobs that are in demand in a particular area. Another way of saying that, we call that having employability skills. Having a skill is certainly important, or it's a good part of a successful career, but having a skill that the market demands That allows you to achieve that success with greater ease. In fact, let's take a moment right now to discuss employability skills that each of us have at the current job that we're working right now. If you would, please take a moment on a sheet of paper, if you have a sheet of paper or a piece of scratch paper nearby where you are, go ahead and write down some of the skills that are an important part of your current job. Like, for instance, right now, my job as a college navigator, speaking in front of audiences, that's a skill that's an important part of my job. So take a moment, if you would, write those down. And remember, we're going to use these a little bit later in the webinar. And while we're doing that, while we're writing down those skills that we have in our current job, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Talisa Laverne, and she's going to talk a little bit more about employability skills.
Good afternoon. As David mentioned, my name is Talisa Laverne, and I want to discuss a portion of our presentation that talks about employability skills. Employability skills are a group of essential abilities that involve the development of a knowledge base, expertise level, and mindset that is necessary for an employee to perform on the job. These skills are what's called transferable skills, and that simply means that your employability skills acquired can be transferred from one job to the next. These skills are also needed to make individuals employable. Along with a good technical understanding and subject knowledge, employers will often outline the set of skills that they want from an employee, and you will often find those in a job posting and or job description. These skills are considered essential qualifications necessary for an employee to carry out their role to the best of their ability. Understand that employability skills depends on your knowledge, skills, attitudes, and how you present them. Now, they can be presented in a manner of ways, either on the resume, on your application, or in an interview. These skills to an employer will determine either getting a job, and your ability to use these skills on the job will determine your success on the job. So employability skills are crucial to getting a job and being successful on the job. Now what I would like to do is break down employability skills to a simpler level. And employability skills simply is a combination of hard and soft skills necessary for everyone to do the job. So what is a hard skill? A hard skill simply involves specific knowledge and ability. For example, a hard skill could be someone with computer programming experience, technical proficiency, mathematics, or data analysis. So a soft skill focuses a little bit more on attributes and personality traits. They have to do with your emotional intelligence and behavior. And an example of a soft skill could be, like David mentioned earlier, he has a skill of public speaking. So a soft skill simply could be the ability to be able to do presentations in public speaking. So what that means is a combination of having good hard skills and good soft skills equal employability skills, thereby equal success. Next, I'd like to show you an illustration. This illustration titled Soft Skills Weigh More Than You Think. And then what does that mean? Well, what that simply means that in a study conducted in 2014 of 2,000 human resource professionals, the findings of that study found that 77% of employers believe that soft skills are just as important as hard skills. And 16% of those think that soft skills are actually more important than hard skills. Let's look at soft skills since they seem to have so much weight. Again, as I mentioned earlier, soft skills are those personal attributes, general skills such as the ability to give advice, feedback, to work collaboratively, to manage your time. And typically, they are not something that you learn in school. Soft skills are something that you acquire through a range of experiences, interests, hobbies, responsibilities. Let's look at a soft skill. Critical thinking. Most of us do critical thinking without even knowing that that's what we're doing, but critical thinking is indeed a soft skill. Let's look at another soft skill, problem solving. We solve problems every day in all types of situations and experiences. Well, this is indeed one of the top soft skills employers are looking for. And another one could be adaptability. Now, what does adaptability mean? And when employers say adaptability, they are looking for individuals that can come into the culture of that organization and that they can blend in with the culture. And so they're able to adapt themselves according to the culture of the organization. And last but not least, communication. I found communication to be on the top 10 list across the board. It seems to be one of the top, for sure, soft skills that employers are looking for in the workforce. And soft skills are becoming a yardstick now for measuring success on the job, and with good reason. Another research study shows that soft skills account for much as 85% of an individual's success on the job, while hard skills only account for 15%. So as we can see, definitely, let me say this again, that hard skills only account for 15% of success on the job. And employers seem to have placed a very good deal of emphasis on an employee's ability to communicate, to think critically, to solve problems, to adapt to the culture of the organization, and to learn new skills and to function independently. These are just a small sampling of some of the soft skills employers are looking for. Some of the other skills that we found were organization, teamwork, social skills, creativity, friendly personality, and punctuality, and we'll discuss those later. So that is a sampling of our soft skills. Now I want to give you a great picture of what a hard skill looks like and define that for you. Hard skills are a part of the skill set that are required for a job, and they include the expertise of an individual to successfully perform their job. Now, these skills are typically found in your job posting and job description. Hard skills are acquired through formal education, training programs, short-term training classes, online classes, certification programs, or on-the-job training. Raise your hand if you've heard of the term targeted occupation. Okay, so let me tell you, targeted occupations, I see there are two that raised their hands. Well, thank you for that. For those who are not aware of targeted occupations are those occupations that require a very specific skill and training. They offer the best job opportunities to residents based on your region. You will learn more about these occupations that are in demand later in our presentation. But I have provided for you a very small sample of hard skills that can be tied directly to the top 25 occupations with the highest projection number of growth added due to growth over the next 10 years. And the first hard skill I'd like to point out to you is computer programming. Computer program is indeed a hard skill. This hard skill, with the right education and credentials, can be used for occupation as a computer system analyst or a computer user support technician, both are on the top 25 list. Now let's look at another hard skill. Reading blueprints. Who would have ever thought reading blueprints would be a hard skill? Well, believe it or not, reading blueprints is indeed a hard skill, and it is required throughout many occupations. However, one occupation that is in much need of individuals that can read blueprints is the construction industry. Another hard skill is data analysis. Data analysis or data management is a hard skill that is found to be very critical in the field of nursing. So if you have someone interested in nursing, a licensed vocational nurse or registered nurse, this hard skill will be critical in that field. And last but not least is foreign language. Foreign language, if you have ability to write, read, or speak a foreign language, this can lead you to an occupation as a teacher. And all of these are on the top 25 occupations that are in demand. So that concludes my portion of this presentation. I will now turn this presentation over to Velta Worley.
Thank you, Felisa. Good afternoon, everybody. So, are you flexible? So, being flexible is a soft skill, and it's typically self-developed. But sometimes flexibility can be learned through trial and error, such as if you're not meeting a job expectation, you may learn the hard way how to become a little bit more flexible. So let's look at the top 10 skills employers are looking for. But before we do that, what one skill do you think an employer is looking for? What I'd like for you to do is go to the chat box and just put one skill that you think is important to employers. So I'll give you a few minutes to start adding. Okay, I see time management, work ethic, really good. Anybody else? Communication, yeah, Felisa touched on that for sure. Punctuality, open to travel, critical thinking, those are all really good. Thank you. So we'll go to the next slide, which shows us the top 10 skills employers want. And we actually use several different resources to come up with this list. This isn't exhaustive at all. But most of these skills, if you take a look at them, have to do with soft skills. So I wanted to just touch on a few of the soft skills. For one thing, creativity. When I think of creativity, I think of being an artist or being able to draw or paint or something, which I can't do any of. But really, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has more to do with being resourceful and innovative in finding solutions to problems at work. So if you can tell a story of an unusual or unconventional way that solved a problem at work, that could be a creative solution. Teamwork skills is another one. Those of you that are teachers probably do work on teams. The bigger the company that you work with, the bigger the chance that you're a member of a team or even more than one team. You may even lead teams, which means solid team player skills are crucial. How well you work with others is really important in achieving the team goals. How do you help other team members, and are you an asset? And then punctuality, something we don't always think about. Of course, we want to be early for an interview, but once we're hired, we definitely want to be on time for work, and we also want to try to be on time for our meetings, our webinars, our phone calls, those types of commitments that we have on the job. We've all heard some variation of 5 minutes early is on time is late, late is unacceptable. So soft skills are really important to employers, and so this next slide has a quote from an HR director, which really shows that soft skills are very important to employers, and we know that they're also mainly self-developed. You can teach people, but it's a little bit harder than the hard skills, which are part of an occupation. So to develop our hard skills, the skills that are gained through education and experience, the skills that we need for a particular job, such as knowing how to weld or computer skills, depending on the job, or being able to read blueprints, those are part of the hard skills that we can actually teach people. So we asked you at the beginning of the webinar to identify some of the skills you have for the position you currently are in. And was that easy or hard? I'm going to guess that was pretty easy. It's like David talked about having presentation skills. Another skill on our College Navigator team is being able to put together presentations, not just deliver them. So you probably found that what you do is a fairly easy skill. You know, you can determine what skills you need for the job you currently have, but sometimes it can be difficult for the students that we work with to identify the skills that they need for a particular career pathway. They've just never looked at it as, okay, what do I need? So I'd like us to look at a really useful tool that I hope you will find helpful as you work with your students. It is known as ONET, Occupational Information Network, which I have up on the screen. And if you look at the little circled area, I'm actually going to go to that area, which I absolutely love, which is called My Next Move. So we'll go ahead to that. And this is what it looks like. So on the very right-hand side, tell us what you like to do. I'm just going to point that out briefly. This could be an activity that you do with your students. It helps them figure out where their interests really lie, because you'd think that people would know what they really like to do, but they don't always know it until they start, you know, searching and researching and answering questions about it, and they figure out, oh yeah, I guess I would be good at, you know, being a welder. So that's a really good activity to do with your students if you have time and you have computer access. But we're going to go to the first box, which is search careers with keywords, and you can put anything in that box. Today we're going to put teacher in that box and just look at what it pulls up. So this is another example that you can do with your students. It pulls up a list of occupations that are related to teachers. So you see everything from teacher's assistants, elementary school, middle school, you know, all of those types of things. Over to the right, there's some information about which jobs have a bright outlook. Basically, they're going to have higher than usual job openings and maybe even salaries depending on the location in the country. Let's look at preschool teacher as just one of our examples. So now you can actually drill down into the occupation. And so it gives some information about the knowledge required for the position. Obviously, customer service, you're going to be working with children as well as their parents. Let's see, some, you know, basic skills, being able to talk to people. I think on here really should also be that you really like working with children, because you're going to have a lot of them around you. You know, abilities, the verbal, attention to detail, things like that. Let's scroll down the screen a little bit. It goes into the personality and what technology you might need to use for this particular occupation. And it does this for any occupation that you put into that box. So this one shows the education, which, you know, requires a high school diploma. It's also one of the Bright Outlook jobs, which is really great. And very often a preschool teacher will be paid higher than minimum wage. And of course, it depends on your region. This is the national dollar amount, but you can also click on any of these buttons to look at your local region or just the state of Texas. And typically it's going to vary a little bit, but you can get kind of an average by looking right here. So we're going to go back to the slide. Yeah. Okay, so oops, I'll go back to the previous slide. Thank you. So we did talk about tell us what you like to do and search careers. So earlier, we looked at the top skills employers are looking for all occupations. And we kind of touched on the soft skills, but how can we identify the skills the employer is looking for a specific job? Actually, you can use something as old-fashioned as a job application or an employment listing, job posting. This could be an activity that you could do with your students. You could get copies of the newspaper, the Green Sheet, any of your local papers, your job periodicals, and ask them to circle some of the skills that the employer is looking for in that particular occupation. And if you're highlighting those skills as you find them on the job posting, I want to really stress this part. If you have your students highlight those skills, those are the skills that the student, if they have them, should highlight on their resume or application. And sometimes even if they don't have it, they may have the ability to do it, even though they've never done it before. So that's just something to think about. So what I'd like to do is look at an actual want ad. And this is an actual ad that we took a picture of in one of our local employment periodicals. So you could do this with your students, just get out a bunch of newspapers, have them look at some ads that interest them, and ask them to circle what they think some of the skills are required for the occupation. So I want you to look at this and just come up with, a couple of skills that you see. You don't have to put them in the chat box or anything, but just think about them. And I'll give you a couple of seconds for that. So let's go ahead and we'll click on the first skill. So the first one is read and edit Mazatrol. So hopefully you can see that. And that's something specific to a machinist position. The next one is set up and run a CNC mill. So again, that's very specific to a machinist position. I could do neither one of them. I don't even know what they mean. Next one, program or 4-axis experience. This has to do with, being more than 3 dimensions. They have to be able to machine in all different dimensions. And then the next one is programming, which we have programming in other occupations. It's not just machinist. So we all are familiar with programming, but it would be specific to the machinist position. And then, of course, the being able to read blueprints is really, really important. And all of these are hard skills. None of these are the soft skills. So hopefully you found some of the same ones that I did. And if you have the skills that an employer is looking for, you might qualify for this job. So this one does require some experience. So most people who have been machinists will understand the language that they're presenting there. So typically, want ads aren't as detailed as an online ad, but it gives a good idea what the employer is looking for because, a want ad, they have to pay for it, so they're going to keep it as brief as possible. Remember, you can always use online resources, so look at an ad in the newspaper, go to ONET, and get a better sense of what skills and what the educational requirements are for a particular occupation. So now let's look at the same occupation from an online job posting. So this is the same thing, CNC machinist. It looks a little bit different. It doesn't have all the pictures, and I couldn't put everything on this slide. The online ad also included what their package is, how much vacation and, that you get medical and all of that kind of stuff. So you might not always see that on a newspaper ad. So we're going to do the same thing here and circle just a few of the requirements for this particular machinist job posting. So go ahead and click on that. So produce high volume. So it looks to me, it says in cost-efficient manner. So they need to produce quality work and do it quickly. Perform own setups. So obviously this person needs experience, and we see that at the bottom. So they need to be able to work pretty independently without somebody having to come do it for them, set up the machine for them. Check dimensions of parts, so they need to be able to measure and measure in very, very small tolerances. They need to be able to inspect gauges. They need to know how to do that and the types of different gauges. And then, once again, they need to be able to read blueprints. So, again, as you highlight the skills that an employer is looking for on a job posting, these are the skills that if you have them, you would want to highlight in your resume or application. And so this is really an activity you can do with your students, whether you have computer access or not. You can use a newspaper as well. And finally, This is just a slide. I thought it was cute. It shows an individual carrying all his tools with him, and those tools are all his skills, whether they're hard skills, soft skills. We hope your students will recognize the skills they have and how to apply them for the different positions that they're looking at. Diego is now going to show you some resources that can help you determine what occupations are considered in demand for your particular region, because we have a very large state and each region might have something a little bit different. And he's going to show you how to explore those required skills. So I'm now going to turn it over to Diego.
All righty, thank you, Velta. All right, everybody. Good afternoon, Texas. It's good to be with you. So right now, I am going to review additional employability skills, job descriptions, resources, and how they all tie in together. I will also show how those resources could be used to develop an activity for your students. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so earlier we asked you to create a list of your own skills. Right in front of us, we have a list that we developed from one of our students. So if we look at these skills right here, they wouldn't be very effective when they're trying to sell themselves to an employer. But if we take a job description like we looked at earlier, we can pull some of the information from that job description and improve our own skills. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. All right. So whenever we look at the job description, we can take some of these bullet points and put them in our own words and add them to our own list. And it already looks a lot better to an employer based on that information. But it's not complete yet. What I'm going to do with you right now is show you another resource that we can use in order to improve that list of skills. So right here, we have Texas Career Checks occupation information, and that's provided by the State of Texas Labor Market and Career Information's website. So if we look at this list of tasks for a cashier, we can add a couple of more bullets to our list of skills. So from here, we took issue receipts, refunds, credit cards for customers, and change due to customers. But what I'm going to do now is go live and show you a little bit more about the occupation information page provided by Texas Career Check. So let's go ahead and go live. All right, so on Texas Career Check's occupation information page, you can look for any occupation based on their occupation title, their salary, or their projected Texas annual openings. So what we are going to do, based on the information we had earlier, we are going to search for a cashier from our students. So here we'll go ahead and search for cashiers, click on it, and we have the job tasks, and we have a lot of other labor market information associated with that occupation. But just from this list right here, we can pull a lot of this information to improve our skills or the skills that we're going to put on a resume or talk about in an interview. But we'll discuss more of that later. But based on this, we can look at some of these and use those. So number 9, if we look at number 9, weigh items sold by weight to determine prices. If we ask somebody who has been a cashier in their work history, more than likely they're not going to list this as one of their skills. So whenever you're speaking with one of your students, you can have them look through one of these lists based on their past occupations, and this will help them refresh their memory. Another one would be number 18, request information or assistance using a paging system. So think of those funny price checks whenever a cashier needs to do a price check on an item. That's one of the communication skills that, or soft skills that a student would have, or a cashier would need and could be sold to an employer or make them valuable to another employer. So it's a really good point of reference for a student to look through these skills just to add some information to their resumes or what have you. All righty, I'm going to go back to the presentation and look at Texas Career Check. So this is the landing page for Texas Career Check, and there's a lot of good resources on this page. So whenever you have a chance, I'd advise you to go and look at some of these, but we're going to highlight 3 of these today. We just looked over occupation information, but we're also going to look at occupation trends, and we're also going to look at Papa Job. And I'll go into more information about that later, or a better discussion. So let's go ahead and move forward. So I'm going to go live with you again to occupation trends. So, oh, wrong one. So here we have occupation trends. And what occupation trends is a list of the top 25 occupations making above the Texas median wage of $34,000. And you can go and you can go and change this list based on your region. So one of you earlier, I believe it was Mr. Joel, you said that you were from the capital area, so we can look into what number is number 14. We can go to capital area, and we can see the list of occupations based on their demand, or at least the top 25 in the capital area. We see number 1 is registered nurse, and we see that number 2 is software developers. So I've heard that the Austin area is called Silicon Hills. So number 2, it's no surprise that software developers is number 2. And we can understand that registered nurses is number 1 because there's a high demand for registered nurses all over the state of Texas. So what I like about this list is if you click on any of these occupations, it will take you back to Texas Career Check's occupation summary that we talked about earlier in the occupation information. So you have the job tasks and all of the other labor market information. So definitely, oh, well, thank you for that. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. All right, next, we are going to talk about Texas wages. So again, I'm going to go live to talk about Texas wages. So I like Texas wages, especially for adult education and literacy instructors, because what you can do is create math problems based on salary information for occupations. So you can tailor any of this information based on your students' math ability or their interest in certain occupations. And right here, you can sort all of these occupations based on their standard occupation classification code or SOC code, or you can sort them in ascending order from A to Z by clicking here. So we started with accountants, and it'll take you all the way down to zoologists. And but right now, what I'm going to ask you to do is perform a simple math equation. So let's go ahead and sort it by SOC code. And what we are going to do is look at the refuse and recyclable material collectors, okay? I know that one of you said you're from the heart of Texas, and another said that you're from West Central Texas. So let's go ahead and look at West Central Texas. All right, well, So it's going to be the third one down. So for West Central Texas, all the way over, we have $32,000. So how much more does a refuse collector make in West Central Texas than they do the heart of Texas? So remember, that was 32,166. Now if we go down to heart of Texas, we have 32,026. So that is a difference of what, $144 or $40? All right. So here's another question that I can ask for you guys. All right, or you can turn around and ask your students if you are teaching them math. We can look at the difference between entry level and experienced levels of experience for certain occupations. So using the same occupation, we'll use refuse and recyclable material collectors. I'm just going to call them refuse collectors for short. It's kind of a mouthful to say that over and over and over again. So if we go to entry level, click submit, and then again, sort it by stock code. We will take one from the capital area. So let's go down to the capital area. An entry-level refuse collector collects, or well, I guess I could say collects $27,000 for $27,480 a year, versus an experienced refuse collector. We're going to have to do this all over again, so bear with me. So the capital area refuse collector makes $40,318. So how much more does a capital area experienced refuse collector make than an entry-level refuse collector? So it would be 40,318 minus 27,480. So go ahead and enter that calculation into the chat box. I give you 10 seconds to do that. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. $13,000, approximately 13K. Of course, I wasn't going to make you come down to the exact amount. That would just be painful for all of us. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and go back to the presentation. All right, there is one last resource that I would like to go over with you guys, and it's also found on Texas Career Check, and it's called Papa Job. And this is a really, really fun way for you to improve your students' vocabulary and also work with their spelling skills for those of you who are teaching English to speakers of other languages. So I'm going to take us live again, and we're going to play one round of Papa Job. So what this is it's basically Hangman or Wheel of Fortune, but it uses occupations as its subjects, and it's really fun. And what I'm going to do is a really quick Wheel of Fortune's RSTLNE to see what we got. So RSTLNE. Uh-oh. All right. Does anybody want to solve the puzzle? Or if anybody wants to put a letter into the chat box and help me out, that would be great. R. What else do we have? Okay.
Okay, we switch back to phone.
Okay. So A, P. Okay, let's P. I'm having trouble finding these letters. And then O. And then a D. And then a D. A C. Thank you, Miriam. But that was a pop. What else do we have? A G. Does anybody know the answer? Guesses on letters? B, F, freight, for, forwarders. Okay, so that's a new occupation to me, and because it's new to me, what I can do is explore this occupation and learn all of the labor market information associated with this occupation. So I think it's a fun tool. Like, even if you're bored, I think it'd be fun to check out. So, all righty, thank you, Joel. All right, so that concludes my portion. What I'm going to do is turn it over to David Spears, and he is going to conclude this webinar. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Diego. I'm gonna go home tonight and play that game. I love that game. All right, I'm sorry, let me stop sharing. Okay, good, thank you very much. So, in the last few minutes, about 45 minutes or so, we've discussed several things about ways that we can identify as well as highlight skills that employers want, finding occupations that are in demand in a particular area or region of the state. What we did was we began, if you remember, we began listing some of the skills that we currently have in our job that we're working right now, okay? And we had an example of customer service and operating a cashier. But we wanted to know exactly what some of those skills are that employers are wanting at the same time. So we compared that with some of those Texas labor market information, websites and such, so we can get a better way to describe some of those skills. And also, if we're not sure about what skills that we do, sometimes you do the same thing over and over again. You're not sure exactly what that's called or referred to. We also talked about some of the hard skills and the soft skills, and we learned that hard skills are just as important as soft skills. About 77% of employers feel that they're just as important, and about 16% feel that they're even more important. So that's something that we've learned also. Critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability, communication, those just being a few examples of soft skills that we may have or that we can work on improving. Okay, we've also learned how to compare our skills with the Texas labor market information such as ONET and Texas Career Check. With ONET, we went through My Next Move so we can get even more information about certain careers that we're thinking about, entertaining the idea and of going into and finding information about that. Is that going to have a bright outlook for the future, or is it not? So some of those things help us make our decisions on a new career or simply improving our career. Another way that we also went through is to find information on a particular job posting. You know, what the employers are wanting or needing, they're going to place in that job posting, and that's a good way to learn a particular jargon of a particular industry, such as CNC machining, that we kind of looked at and picked out some of the important aspects of that particular job that employer is wanting. And we want to use that same lingo in our resume. Okay. We also, Diego looked at the Texas Career Check, and we found another way of finding information about particular careers that we have and trying to describe and highlight them, as well as going through, already said that, job postings, as well as going through occupation trends and finding out, okay, what's the top 25 occupations that have a bright outlook in a particular area that we're from, as well as looking at how much does one particular occupation earn in one particular part of the state and compare that to statewide. And we're able to even show some ways that we can incorporate that same labor market information and workforce knowledge into math or vocabulary activities for a more integrated approach to learning. So, we've even used some of that game with the Papa Job and how you can use that in your classroom. I see that one of the ways that we could do that is using warm-ups, and that's a great way. You know, sometimes I think about that. Thank you, Paula, for that idea. So we've kind of come to the end of the webinar, and we've discussed some of those things. So now we want to take the time, if anybody has any particular questions, go ahead and enter that in the chat if you've not already, and we'll see if we can answer those. Or any thoughts about, okay, how do we get occupation trends?
You can get to occupation trends. Let me go ahead and visit it right here so I can show you guys. You can find it from the Labor Market and Career Information website.
Share your screen.
Yes. Alrighty. So if I come over here. So it's provided by the Labor Market and Career Information from the State of Texas website, but it's www.texaswages.com. So let me show you. Once you go to that page, it's going to ask you if you want it separated by workforce development area, metropolitan statistical area, MSA, or if you want to see Texas employment projections. To get where I was, you would go to the workforce development area. And those are the regions or areas that we talked about earlier and how the state of Texas is separated. All right.
There's another question. It says, who oversees Texas Wages website?
It would be the Texas Workforce Commission. Oh, occupation trends. Occupation trends, I'm sorry, I showed you the Texas Wages, and somebody put it for us. Who was that? Paula, thank you so much. So we go, oops, nope. Go to my screen. So if we go to Texas Career Check, and we go to Explore Careers, you have occupation information and occupation trends. And that's how you would get to occupation trends. Any other questions?
4 minutes left. So if anybody has any additional questions or comments, please share them in the chat pod and we'll be able to respond. And also, I just want to let you know that we will have this information available in the Community of Practice, the Career Pathways Community of Practice, in the Professional Development Portal.
So the very last slide that we have on here, it does have the list of our resources that, you know, the areas that we went to. So we have the URL code. If you get a copy of this, you could just click on any of those and it has a hyperlink attached to it. But it also has the URL address.
Thank all of you here from the Gulf Coast.
Thank you to our presenters. Thank you, David, Felisa, Velta, and Diego. We really appreciate this, and I'm so excited to be starting these Workforce Wednesday webinars, and I hope that everyone will continue to join us and tell others to join us too. But thank you so much for this awesome presentation, and we look forward to our next session on December the 6th. Thank you.